Gentlemen, every one of us walks into moments where the odds don't look fair. Challenges feel bigger than our abilities, setbacks feel personal, and sometimes the voice in our own head is the loudest barrier we face. But the truth is, the way you think in those moments determines whether you crumble or rise. Winning doesn't start with resources, luck, or connections. It starts with training your mind. Think about this, your brain will believe whatever you repeat to it. If you constantly say, I can't handle this, you'll prove yourself right. If you decide, I can figure this out, your mind gets busy searching for ways to make it happen. The world outside won't always bend to your will, but your thoughts, that's where you hold power. When the pressure is on, your first instinct might be panic, self-doubt, or hesitation. Training your mind means catching that split second and choosing differently. Instead of spiraling into fear, you give yourself a command, move, act, step forward. Winning isn't always about being the strongest. It's about refusing to let fear dictate your moves. Think of every obstacle as a workout for your mental muscle. Just like training in a gym, each repetition, each time you push through resistance makes you stronger. The harder the test, the greater the strength you build for the next round. People don't become unshakable by avoiding problems. They become unshakable by facing them and choosing growth every single time. So in every situation, whether it's conflict, opportunity, or uncertainty, you've got a choice. You can shrink or you can train your mind to rise. Winning isn't a one-time event. It's the consistent decision to trust yourself, to act when it's easier to freeze, and to see possibility when everyone else sees limits. That's the real victory, mastering your thoughts so you can master the moment. Controlling the first thought is one of the most powerful skills you can ever build because it sets the direction for everything that follows. The human brain is designed to protect us, which means when we face uncertainty or challenge, the very first thought that often shows up is negative. It might sound like, this is too hard, what if I fail? Or I'm not ready for this. Those thoughts don't show up because you're weak or unprepared. They show up because your brain is wired to anticipate danger. But here's the catch, that first thought doesn't have to be the one that controls you. You have the ability to interrupt it, to catch it, and to redirect it before it takes root. Imagine standing at the edge of an opportunity. Maybe it's speaking in front of a room, asking for something you've earned, or stepping into a role you've never tried before. In that moment, your body tightens, your heart races, and your mind throws up alarms. The automatic thought could be, I'm going to embarrass myself. If you let that thought run wild, your body will follow. You'll hesitate, avoid the challenge, and miss the chance. But if you step in right there, if you take control of that first thought, you flip the entire script. You might replace it with, I am capable of figuring this out, or I've done hard things before, I can handle this too. That simple shift changes your emotional state, and when your emotional state changes, your actions follow. Think of the first thought like the first domino in a long line. Knock down the wrong one, and the chain reaction leads to fear, paralysis, and regret. But choose the right one, and the momentum carries you forward into courage, creativity, and performance. You don't need to control every single thought you ever have. That's impossible. What you need is the awareness and discipline to direct the first one because it has the most influence. The process takes practice. At first, you might not even notice the automatic thought until it's already pulled you into doubt or worry. That's okay. Every time you catch it, even if it's late, you're building awareness. Over time, that awareness sharpens and you start catching the thought earlier, right at the moment it appears. From there, you replace it with something intentional, not blind positivity, but something grounded and useful. Words that remind you of your ability to act, to learn to adapt. Picture an athlete standing at the starting line. The crowd is loud, the stakes are high, and the pressure is heavy. The first thought could easily be, don't mess this up. If that thought takes over, the athlete will tighten, second guess, and underperform. But the athlete who has trained their mind will override that initial negativity with a clear command, go hard, trust your training. That one adjustment doesn't erase the nerves, but it channels them into focus and energy instead of fear. The same principle applies to every situation in life, from tough conversations to big decisions to personal goals. It's worth pointing out that controlling the first thought isn't about denying reality or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about choosing the most empowering interpretation of reality in order to take the best next step. If you're staring at a mountain of problems, you don't need to tell yourself, this is easy. You can tell yourself, one step at a time, I will move through this. That thought creates momentum. That thought fuels resilience. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. At first, it feels like a battle, one automatic thought versus one intentional thought. Over time, though, the intentional thought becomes the default. Your brain learns the new pattern, just like a muscle learns a new movement through repetition. What once took conscious effort begins to happen on its own. That's the moment when your inner dialogue becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Think about all the situations where this single shift could change the outcome: walking into an interview, navigating conflict with someone you care about, dealing with unexpected setbacks, or even just facing the daily grind of responsibilities. In every one of those scenarios, the first thought creates the frame. If the frame is fear, everything inside looks threatening. If the frame is courage, everything inside becomes an opportunity to grow. This practice doesn't just affect your individual performance, it also shapes the way you influence others. When people around you see you calm, focused, and proactive in stressful situations, it builds trust. They feel more grounded because your mindset radiates through your actions. Leaders who can control their first thought inspire confidence because they show that even when things feel uncertain, it's possible to choose strength over panic. At the core, controlling the first thought is an act of ownership. It's saying, I may not control the world, I may not control other people, but I can control what I think first, and that gives me power over what I do next. That's where winning starts, not in the outcome, but in the choice you make in your own head at the very beginning. Shifting from fear to focus is a discipline that can transform the way you handle every challenge that comes your way. Fear is natural. It's your brain's way of trying to protect you from harm. But left unchecked, fear becomes the loudest voice in the room, pulling your attention toward everything that could go wrong instead of what you can actually do right now. When fear takes the lead, it paralyzes action, creates hesitation, and feeds self-doubt. Focus, on the other hand, brings your mind back to the present. It directs your energy towards solutions, effort, and progress. And the difference between staying stuck and moving forward is often nothing more than the ability to shift from fear to focus. Picture yourself about to take on a challenge. Maybe it's presenting in front of a large audience, starting a project that feels too big, or having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Fear shows up quickly, whispering things like, what if I mess this up? Or I'm not good enough to handle this. Your body responds with a pounding heart, shallow breath, sweaty palms. The mistake most people make is believing that fear means they should stop. But fear doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention. This is where you make the shift. Instead of letting the fear drag you into worst-case scenarios, you redirect that energy into focus. What's the very next thing I need to do? What's one action that moves me forward? That pivot takes the same surge of adrenaline and points it toward productivity. The beauty of focus is that it shrinks the size of the problem. Fear wants you to see the whole mountain at once. It magnifies the uncertainty and convinces you that it's impossible. Focus doesn't try to climb the entire mountain in one step. It narrows your view to the path right in front of you. It says, forget the peak for now. Just take this step, then the next. That way, the challenge becomes manageable, and every small action builds momentum, which eventually breaks the grip of fear. Think about elite performers, athletes, soldiers, surgeons. They all feel fear, especially in high-stakes situations. The difference is they've trained their minds to shift immediately into focus. An athlete doesn't dwell on what happens if they lose. They zero in on executing the play in front of them. A surgeon doesn't spiral about the weight of saving a life. They concentrate on the precision of each movement. That's not because they're fearless, but because they've learned the power of directing their attention away from what could go wrong and toward what must be done. It's important to understand that focus doesn't eliminate fear, it harnesses it. The rush of energy you feel in fear is the same energy you can use for peak performance. Adrenaline sharpens your senses, quickens your reaction time, and readies your body for action. Left in fear, that energy makes you freeze. Redirected into focus, that same energy makes you sharper, more alert, and more capable. The shift doesn't require calm, it requires clarity. It's about deciding that your attention will serve you, not sabotage you. There are practical ways to make this shift easier. Breathing deeply is one of them, because it interrupts the body's panic response and gives your mind a moment of control. Breaking a task into the smallest possible action is another, because it gives you something immediate to direct your focus toward. Even repeating a simple phrase like, one step at a time, acts as an anchor. Each of these tools is a way of saying to fear, you're not driving this. I am. Over time, as you practice this shift, your relationship with fear changes. Instead of seeing it as a signal to retreat, you begin to see it as a signpost that you're stretching beyond comfort. Fear becomes a companion to growth, not a barrier. Each time you redirect from fear to focus, you reinforce the habit of action over avoidance. And that habit becomes a powerful part of who you are. Imagine the ripple effect this has in your life. In your career, it means you stop holding back opportunities because of what-ifs. In your relationships, it means you step into honest conversations instead of avoiding them. In your personal goals, it means you push through the discomfort that usually stops you. Shifting to focus allows you to build confidence, not by waiting until you no longer feel fear, but by proving to yourself that you can move forward even while fear is present. What's remarkable is that this practice doesn't just change outcomes, it changes your identity. Each time you choose focus, you build the evidence that you are someone who acts in the face of fear. That identity becomes your foundation, a source of strength you can rely on whenever challenges appear. And the more you reinforce it, the less power fear has over you, because your reflex becomes action instead of hesitation. Fear will always knock at the door when life asks more of you. The question is, will you let it sit you down, or will you shift your attention to what you can do right here, right now? Focus is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's the steady, clear decision to keep your mind on the step in front of you instead of being swallowed by the unknown. And with each shift, you train yourself not only to face challenges, but to thrive in them. Taking the small step is one of the most underrated yet powerful approaches to achieving anything meaningful. When people set goals or face challenges, they often overwhelm themselves by staring at the enormity of the whole task. The mountain looks too high, the finish line too far, the change too complicated. That feeling of being swallowed by the big picture often becomes the reason many never begin. But momentum doesn't come from tackling the entire mountain all at once. It comes from the very first step, however small it may seem. The act of moving forward, even imperfectly, creates energy and progress in a way that thinking and planning alone never will. Consider how often people wait for the perfect time to start something new. They tell themselves they'll launch the project when they feel more confident, start exercising once they have more time, or pursue the opportunity after they've done more research. Waiting for that perfect moment is just fear in disguise. The truth is, confidence doesn't appear before action, it grows out of action. Taking a small step is the fastest way to quiet the doubts in your head because it gives you evidence that you're capable of moving forward. Even a single action changes the way you see yourself, from someone stuck in hesitation to someone who is already in motion. The power of the small step is that it bypasses the paralysis that comes from overthinking. Imagine someone standing at the bottom of a staircase. If they look all the way to the top, they may convince themselves it's too far, too exhausting, or not worth it. But if they simply lift one foot and take the first step, suddenly the climb becomes possible. And the moment they take that first step, the second step feels easier, then the third, and so on. Progress builds on itself, and momentum starts to carry them forward. By the time they've reached the middle, they're no longer thinking about how daunting the staircase looked. They're simply climbing. Small steps also protect you from the illusion that you must have everything figured out before you begin. Life rarely works in neat, predictable lines. Often the path only reveals itself after you've started walking. By taking a single step, you gather new information, build new skills, and discover insights you could never have known from a standstill. Action creates clarity, while hesitation only multiplies confusion. If you wait until you have the entire plan mapped out, you may wait forever. But by starting small, you open the door for opportunities to unfold. Think about how this plays out in real life. If your goal is to write a book, staring at the idea of 300 pages will feel crushing. But committing to writing one page today is manageable. That one page leads to another, and soon the manuscript begins to grow. If your goal is to get in shape, focusing on losing 50 pounds might discourage you. But lacing up your shoes and walking around the block today is a step. Do it again tomorrow, and then again, and eventually the small steps compound into a transformation. The same is true for learning a skill, building a business, or repairing a relationship. Progress is always built from small, consistent actions. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you take even the smallest step. You prove to yourself that you are not powerless, and that proof is a powerful motivator. Each step becomes a vote of confidence in the person you want to become. Over time, those small wins add up, shaping not only your results but your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids challenges and start seeing yourself as someone who takes action, no matter how small. That identity becomes a source of pride and resilience because you know you can trust yourself to move forward, even in the face of uncertainty. The fear of failure often holds people back, but small steps minimize that risk. If you take a tiny action and it doesn't work out, you haven't lost much. You've gained valuable feedback. You can adjust, pivot, or try a different approach. But if you never start because you're afraid of failing, you deny yourself the chance to learn anything at all. Progress is never a straight line. It's a series of experiments, adjustments, and corrections. Small steps make those experiments safe and manageable while still keeping you in motion toward your goal. There's also a deep satisfaction in seeing progress, no matter how small. Checking something off your list, completing a task, or moving a project forward by just a fraction triggers a sense of accomplishment. That sense of progress is motivating in itself, encouraging you to keep going. The more you experience those little wins, the more momentum you build, until eventually what once felt impossible becomes part of your routine. Taking small steps doesn't mean lowering your ambition or settling for less. It means respecting the process of growth. Big goals are achieved not through giant leaps, but through steady, consistent action. The person who tries to do it all at once often burns out or gives up. The person who commits to small, repeatable steps builds a foundation that lasts. It's not glamorous, but it's effective, and over time, the results are extraordinary. The truth is, no one ever climbs a mountain in a single bound. They climb it by taking one step, then another and another, until the summit comes into view. Life works the same way. The mountain might look impossible from the bottom, but you don't have to conquer the whole thing today. You just need to take one small step. And once you've done that, you're already on your way. Reframing obstacles as training is a mindset that turns every challenge into an opportunity for growth. Most people see obstacles as interruptions to their plans, as barriers standing between them and success. They feel frustrated, discouraged, or even defeated when things don't go smoothly. But what if every obstacle was actually part of the process? A necessary test designed to strengthen you for what lies ahead. When you begin to see setbacks and struggles as training, the entire way you experience challenges shifts. Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstances, you begin to recognize yourself as someone in preparation, sharpening your skills, building resilience, and preparing for bigger opportunities. Think about the way athletes train. They don't improve by doing what's easy. They lift heavier weights, run harder drills, and push their bodies through discomfort. Every repetition is resistance, but it's that very resistance that makes them stronger. Without the weight, the muscles don't grow. Without the drill, the skills don't sharpen. Life works the same way. The obstacles you encounter are the resistance that develops your mental, emotional, and even physical strength. If you never face setbacks, you'd never discover what you're capable of overcoming. When you reframe obstacles as training, you also stop wasting energy fighting reality. Many people spend more time complaining about their challenges than actually addressing them. They get caught in the loop of asking, why is this happening to me? Instead of asking, what is this here to teach me? That small shift in perspective is powerful. It transforms obstacles from being sources of frustration into sources of instruction. Instead of draining you, they begin to equip you. Each challenge becomes a teacher, offering lessons you wouldn't learn any other way. Consider a person building a business. Every setback, whether it's a failed product launch, a client who backs out, or a marketing strategy that doesn't land, feels like a roadblock. But if that person reframes each experience as training, they start to see the value in the mistakes. A failed launch teaches them more about what customers want. A lost client sharpens their ability to pitch or negotiate. A marketing misstep forces them to dig deeper into strategy. Over time, these obstacles, which once felt like punishment, become the very experiences that refine their skills and set them apart. Without those struggles, they would never develop the resilience or creativity that ultimately leads to success. There's also an emotional strength that comes from this mindset. Life is unpredictable and challenges are inevitable. If you see every obstacle as a sign that you're off track, you'll constantly feel discouraged. But if you see them as part of the journey, you develop a kind of calm confidence. You begin to expect the bumps, and instead of panicking, you meet them with curiosity. What can I learn here? How will this prepare me for what's next? That mindset doesn't eliminate the pain of struggle, but it transforms it into purpose. Pain without meaning feels crushing. Pain with meaning feels like progress. Even personal hardships can be reframed in this way. Think about people who faced loss, failure, or disappointment. Many will tell you that those very experiences, though painful, made them stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. They develop patience, empathy, and grit that they never would have gained otherwise. Obstacles don't just train your skills, they train your character. They shape the way you handle pressure, the way you connect with others, and the way you bounce back when life knocks you down. What makes this perspective so powerful is that it puts you back in control. You may not be able to choose the obstacles you face, but you can always choose how to interpret them. If you see them as walls, you'll stop in front of them. If you see them as training, you'll push through, knowing that the very act of facing them is making you stronger. This mindset doesn't mean you enjoy every challenge or wish for more difficulties. It means you refuse to let them go to waste. Every obstacle becomes fuel for growth. Over time, this way of thinking creates resilience. You become less shaken by setbacks because you've trained yourself to expect and even value them. You stop being surprised when things don't go perfectly and start using those moments to practice persistence. And each time you overcome something difficult, you carry that strength into the next challenge, stacking layer upon layer of confidence. Imagine how different your life could look if you treated every obstacle as training. Instead of dreading challenges, you'd face them with determination. Instead of giving up when things got hard, you'd lean in, knowing that growth is happening. Instead of seeing yourself as unlucky or incapable, you'd see yourself as someone in constant preparation, building skills and strength for bigger opportunities. That shift doesn't just help you overcome the obstacles in front of you. It transforms you into the kind of person who can handle anything that comes next. Building repetition is the bridge between good intentions and lasting transformation. So many people get excited about a goal, pour themselves into it for a few days or weeks, and then fall off when the initial burst of motivation fades. The reason isn't that they're weak or incapable. It's that motivation is temporary, but repetition builds habits. When you repeat an action consistently, no matter how small, it begins to carve a groove in your brain. That groove becomes a path of least resistance, a default way of operating. What once felt difficult or unnatural eventually becomes automatic, and that's where real power lies. Think about how you learned any skill you now take for granted. Walking, reading, driving a car, typing on a keyboard, all of these were once foreign and awkward. The first attempts were clumsy and uncomfortable, but through repetition, they became second nature. You no longer have to think about each individual step. Your body and mind know the rhythm because they've rehearsed it countless times. The same principle applies to training your mindset. If you want to think with resilience, act with courage, or build discipline, you can't just do it once or twice. You need repetition until it becomes who you are. Repetition creates reliability. Without it, you're always starting over. Imagine trying to get fit by going to the gym once every few weeks. You'd feel sore each time, but you'd never build momentum or strength. But show up regularly, even if the sessions aren't perfect and your body adapts. Consistency teaches your muscles to grow and your stamina to expand. In the same way, consistency in your thoughts and actions trains your mind to respond with strength rather than hesitation. Each repetition is a deposit in your mental bank account, and over time, those deposits add up to wealth and confidence and skill. It's tempting to believe that big, dramatic effort is what leads to transformation. But more often than not, it's the quiet, steady work of repetition that makes the difference. 10 minutes of reading every day builds more knowledge than reading for 3 hours once and never returning to it. Practicing gratitude daily shifts your outlook more profoundly than one intense moment of appreciation. Writing a few sentences every day leads to a book faster than trying to write entire chapters in unpredictable bursts. Small repeated actions compound over time into results that feel extraordinary. What makes repetition so powerful is that it doesn't just change your behavior, it reshapes your identity. When you repeat an action consistently, you begin to see yourself differently. If you exercise regularly, even in small doses, you start to see yourself as someone who takes care of their health. If you practice public speaking consistently, you begin to identify as a confident communicator. That identity becomes self-reinforcing. You no longer have to drag yourself to act because the action aligns with who you already believe yourself to be. Repetition also builds resilience against setbacks. When you've repeated something often, missing a single day or facing a small obstacle doesn't derail you. It's just a blip in a much larger pattern. Compare that to someone who only acts sporadically. One setback can feel like the end. Repetition creates a foundation strong enough to weather interruptions without collapsing. That stability is what allows long-term success. Another powerful aspect of repetition is that it lowers resistance. The hardest part of taking action is often just starting. But when you repeat something often, you remove the debate in your head. There's no argument about whether you should or shouldn't do it. It's simply what you do. That automatic rhythm reduces decision fatigue and frees up energy for more important challenges. Instead of negotiating with yourself every time, you just follow the pattern you've already built. Even in the face of fear or discomfort, repetition can transform your response. For example, someone terrified of speaking in public won't overcome the fear by reading about it or thinking about it. They overcome it by repeatedly putting themselves in situations where they speak, starting small and building up. Each repetition reduces the fear slightly and builds confidence. Over time, what once felt terrifying becomes manageable and eventually even enjoyable. That shift doesn't come from a single act of courage. It comes from repeated acts of courage. The truth is, repetition is not glamorous. It's not always exciting. Some days it feels routine, boring, even frustrating, but that's exactly why it works. By showing up again and again, even when the novelty wears off, you prove to yourself that you can persist. That persistence is what transforms temporary effort into permanent capability. Imagine applying this to every area of your life.